All right, we are quickly approaching a couple of minutes after the top of the hour. And we're going to start getting things kicked off here. So thank you all for joining us on today's webinar. We're going to be talking about the life of a model through design, coordination, and into the field. If you know someone that may have signed up for the webinar, but they weren't able to attend live, that's just fine. We'll be able to get links coming out to those that have registered so that you'll be able to go back and review the webinar after the fact if necessary. And also, this webinar, it is being recorded. It will be posted to the ATG USA YouTube channel. So if you happen to be catching this webinar on our YouTube channel, thanks so much for tuning in. Please feel free to give us a like for this particular webinar and feel free to subscribe to that ATG USA YouTube channel there to stay up to date with all of the different content that we're rolling out across all of our different teams. So let's go ahead and get into today's webinar. So we'll quickly take a look here at our agenda. So again, as I mentioned a moment ago on today's webinar, we're going to be going through the life of a model throughout the design process, into coordination, and then ultimately out into the field. So here you can take a quick look at our agenda. You can see that we're going to be talking through a lot of different points in the webinar today. And also keep in mind that we will have a Q&A session at the end. So as long as time will allow, we will have a Q&A session. But if you do have questions, feel free to put those into the Q&A chat on the Zoom meeting, or feel free to chime in during the Q&A session if time will allow for that. All right, so next, let's just briefly have an introduction of who's on the call today. My name is Kyle Lee. I'm our Senior Construction Solutions Specialist here at ATG USA. And today I'm also being joined by Miss Lisa Stein, who is the Partner Marketing Manager on the AUTODESK Construction Solutions team. And Lisa, as always, thank you so much for joining in and assisting with the call today. Really do appreciate it. So let's go ahead and move on into the meat of the webinar. So we've seen a high growth rate in the industry of construction, but at the same time, there are a lot of demands and business pressures that are even higher than that growth rate. So besides these increased pressures and demands, we're also hearing from customers like owners, general contractors, and subcontractors about the challenges that they face every single day. I'm sure you can probably resonate with some of the ones that are listed here on the screen and probably even add a few of your own. But these trends are directly impacting the construction outcomes that you all deal with today, as well as helping shaping how the industry will work tomorrow. It's important to understand that construction is collaborative yet fragmented. And so I want to talk briefly about industry fragmentation because it does directly impact your construction outcomes. Typically, projects are made up of multiple teams working across multiple phases of the project itself. Oops. Sorry about that. Owners, general contractors, and subcontractors typically have different systems and platforms in place. And in fact, 25% of construction firms use 5 or more different software applications, which can make communication a little bit difficult at times between different teams there. So also we see that communication within a team can happen through various different formats, including paper still. And actually 70% of the global construction industry is still working off of paper-based processes. And this method can really add a level of complexity when you consider the communication that's required between these different teams and across different phases of the project itself. So Lisa, I'll let you speak to this slide next time.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. All right, so project-specific challenges. Each firm type experiences pressures differently, basically from all of these broken communication lines, and oftentimes they experience them at different times. However, there is some commonality between them, and you'll see some of that in this list here, and that folks are struggling with file availability, things like rework costs, obviously out-of-date information, lack of accountability, and just overall unclear changes. Go to the next slide, Kyle. Thank you. And this all adds up to a lot. And that's where we're seeing some of these stats come in from. So we've got teams being disconnected and then working from outdated information, which is due to multiple apps, right? Which then can lead to loads of wasted time. As you can see, 35% of time on non-optimal activities is being spent. So at the project level, the disconnect between the office and the field accounts for massive and unavoidable rework costs, like $280 billion there. So then there's the consequences at the business level as well. So things like unused data and poorly communicated project changes, all of that accounts for almost 96% of this massive dent in a company's overall profitability. I'm sure you have known these issues intimately, right, in your own way. And hopefully, you're on this call because you're looking for some kind of solution in this area. We believe that it takes more than just a single piece of technology to achieve goals, but more of an ecosystem that adapts to the ways of working in the changes that you're making in your companies. We'll go to the next slide, Kyle. Thank you. So we've worked with a lot of different companies across the globe to deliver necessary and intuitive capabilities that work to enhance collaboration all the way from design to installation or operations. And all of this is possible through the strong connected foundation. And for us, that's the Autodesk Construction Cloud, or specifically Autodesk Docs that lives inside of that really is kind of the bread and butter that goes all the way from, again, project conception to operations and handover. And it allows shared data to move across different project teams, which then allows assertive decision-making and predictive insights because you've got visibility into the project as a whole. All right, so next slide here, thank you. So today, why are we talking specifically about BIM and models? Well, first, there's a need to make faster decisions in the field. You'll notice that about 75% of firms agree with that statement. Secondly, the return on investment, or the ROI, is no longer a question mark. We've got 82% of BIM users have reported positive ROI. And then third, there's this shift in process, which leads to reduced project error. So we've got about 61% of firms reporting that these BIM processes reduced project error. So with that, let's dive into why why models really matter. All right, cool. So a successful construction project can be determined by how well decisions have been made throughout the process of design and construction, and great decisions are made with the right information. So when 3D models are used alongside the construction documents that we have, owners, the design team, and construction teams are all in a much better position to make those great decisions, right, that lead to great project outcomes. So with the use of models, we see a reduction in errors because everybody understands a picture. When you look at a model in 3D, when you visualize that model or that building, those errors are greatly reduced because you have visibility into what you're working on. It's much easier to see and understand the installation requirements. So for example, when you've gone through and done all of your maybe MEP coordination, we can use that as an example, you know who's going in first and where they're going, and then the clear accountability across teams is just much more visible. So using these models helps to get everybody on the same page and make sure that we're all held accountable to use the models so that we're able to do things better out in the field.
Awesome.
Back to you. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. So what does winning with models look like? Okay, so the first thing to understand is that there has to be a solid execution plan in place. It's got to be established at the very beginning of the design process, and it should be maintained, possibly updated, and followed all the way through the completion of the project into the handover. And it needs to include any owner requirements, any workflows, project-specific objectives, software tools, BIM uses, process mapping, and most importantly, the level of development, so that everyone's on the same page of how far they should take their scope of work throughout the process. With one single source of truth, using the Autodesk Construction Cloud with your Revit models, for instance, or possibly IFCs or DWG files, sharing that live information through the consume method or even through live linking, you're actually able to have that centralized data where you're able to create and manage issues and make sure that everyone's staying on the same page. I think it's important to be very intentional about things like your coordination spaces and how you organize them. And I always, prefer to look at coordination of projects on a level by level perspective. I think it's easier to see and capture everything, and it also makes it a whole lot easier when we're looking at pieces at a time versus the entire building, for instance, as a whole. Then also it's important to look at your folder structure. And this definitely needs to be outlined in the BIM execution plan so that everyone knows where to find their files, so that it's efficient and easy to walk through, and also take advantage of, as well as free add-ins that are available for different software pieces. There's a lot that you can bring into the tools that help you to be successful within the platform as a whole. Then keeping the big picture in mind, always keeping the big picture in mind here. Are you going to be using the model for things like scheduling and estimating? Or maybe it'll be used for a digital twin, or maybe even you're looking to leverage models from the perspective of safety and considering prevention through design opportunities that you have before things get actually rolling out on the construction site itself. So again, there's a lot of effort here to design with construction in mind. The old way is basically in having designers work in their same old siloed environments, and your construction team's kind of doing the same thing. But why don't we combine these? Okay, one of the great ways to start is by having your models in the cloud. No longer does somebody have to have a license for Revit or for AutoCAD or even Navisworks to view a model, because all computers have a browser, and we can easily hop into and view models within your browser. The same will apply to issues as well. Issues that were created on projects that used to be siloed within the team that was creating those. But now you can create issues in one platform and access them in other platforms as well. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes, and be able to understand and address those issues and complete those issues, and even look at things like clash dashboards within Revit, where you can see your clashes within that Revit environment and address them from directly within Revit as well. So when you do have those weekly coordination meetings, you're dealing with less issues, and you're dealing with those that are directly linked into the cloud as well. When you're saving files from Revit, they can also be pushed out into the cloud to be digested by other stakeholders, and for them to be able to do whatever they might need to do with those particular models as well. Okay. So next, we're going to take a look. I'm going to walk you through this quick video that I've got here, talking a little bit about the interface that's available. And so as you can see here, we're within the docs module. And if we open that up, you can see that we have a long list of other modules that are available to us based on the licensing. We also see that we have a long list of projects that we may have been invited into as well. And so if you got another project, you can just easily jump into that from here. As you can see, I am in the files area within docs. And as you can see, I'm within a folder here where we've got a Revit model. And so we've selected that model in the cloud, and we're able to view it very quickly. Within here, we're going to see things like our sheets and our views. So this could be, things like these are the views that are being migrated over from within Revit. So whether it's a 3D view or a 2D sheet, we have that available here. So, again, I can leverage those 2D sheets just as well as I can leverage that 3D model. And as you can see, I've got that floor plan right here, and I have the ability to even potentially create issues from within this floor plan also. Right here, you can also see that we've got levels. And as I mentioned, I like to do the coordination by levels. And so this is exactly how I can leverage the levels from within here. Now you can also see issues that have been created. And so we can jump into an issue, see specifically what that issue is. We can see all the information that's pertaining to it, and even see it in the model browser. Also within the browser, we have the ability to control the different views and what we're seeing within the 3D views. So we have the ability to toggle off and on specific categories like the windows or possibly the walls, as you can see here, and basically get to the level of visibility that we need for what we're working on here. It just allows you to digest the model more quickly in this manner as well. Also, we have the compare feature. And so I had the ability to, maybe I want to compare version 4 to version number 3. Okay. So I can hit that compare button and quickly figure out what's been added in green, what's been removed in red, and also what may have been modified in yellow right here. We can also see directly below that, we can see the specific disciplines that are being impacted by these different changes, whether it's adds, removes, or modifications. Okay. So also within the model here in Docs, we have the ability to update and add a description. We can look at change versions, and we can look at the different versions if we need to see a previous version here as well. And then also we have the ability to see if any markups have been added and if they're personal markups or published markups. Also, I can see who is the person that last updated this model. And so now you can see that I'm in Revit, and what I've got going on is I've gone into the issues add-in tab, and I can open up and I can load the different issues from within that have been created in the cloud there. You can see I can hop back and forth, and you can see the issues in both the cloud as well as within Revit here. Okay. And so right now I can even come back in and create a new issue. Okay. And in this case, we've got a lot of different issues. I'm going to select a coordination issue, and I'm actually going to select a point within the 3D model here in the web browser where I need to place that issue. Now I can fill out all of the different pertinent information around the issue itself, who it might need to be assigned to. And if you do assign it to someone, they'll actually get an email notification saying that they have an issue that's been assigned to their name. And so from that point, that issue has now been created. So now let's hop back over into Revit, and we want to view that issue here. So I can come in and I can click refresh, and then we can see all the other issues. And so I can actually select on that issue. It brings up the issue information. Okay. And I can see all the different information that's been built into the issue. And I can even add information to that issue if I need to as well. And if I happen to resolve the issue, I can change it from an open issue to a closed issue, as you can see right here. And so if I hop back over into the web interface and I refresh my screen, you'll see that that issue has now been changed, and it reflects that it's been closed, and that was closed within the Revit environment, not here. Okay, so now we don't have these silos that we're talking about. I can come in here and I can look at the overview of the issues. So basically we've got our clash matrix here. I can see the project that I'm in. I can see the models that are available to me. And I can see that we've got one open and one closed, and I can even jump directly into docs. Now you can also see that we have our different clash tables that are available to us. And so this allows the designers to see exactly where the clashes are going on. They can address them, make any fixes, and then push them up to the model. So I'm done. I want to save the file. Now I can actually save this file directly into my docs project. So I can go into the appropriate project and select the folder and tell it I want to save. Okay, we can update the project name if we needed to, but now it's going to save that model into the cloud. And now it's available for other people to access. And opening those files are just as easy. You can just reference the Autodesk Docs folder there within the Revit software and go directly into the appropriate folder location where those models had been stored at. Okay. And with that, let's see here. There we go. Back to Lisa for a second.
Awesome. Great job, Kyle. All right, so now we want to focus more specifically on the model coordination module, and what that will allow you to do is automate clash detection for all. So again, cloud-based access to project files for every stakeholder, aggregate models. So multiple stakeholders are pushing in their trades, and then they're able to then combine their models into one place, right? As Kyle was mentioning, that having that common data environment, and then drill down into specific information. So behind all of these 3D objects, there's a lot of valuable metadata that we like to access when we're doing coordination efforts, creating and managing issues. So again, creating issues here and then sharing it back to the design team to address, and then the clash detection philosophy. So I really want to emphasize as to what we consider that philosophy of clash detection that I just mentioned. The way that we look at it is by democratizing how coordination is being done. So what we want to do is enable different subcontractors, different stakeholders to deal with their own clashes in-house that are very minimal. So when we have those coordination meetings weekly, we're dealing with the ones that need more people to resolve very bigger coordination efforts and not just a little in-house issue. So we're really working to alleviate the work for one person and rather distribute it to the rest of the team.
Awesome, that's exactly right. So let's take a look at this from the perspective of a video and actually look at this from within the model coordination module. So as you can see, I am in the model coordination module. And so that's what I've selected here. And you can also see that I'm in the appropriate project. We could also move between projects if necessary. Okay, and so I'm on the models tab, and as you can see right now, I'm looking at my different coordination spaces, and I've just selected the mechanical coordination space, for example. We can see the models that are associated to the mechanical coordination space, and we can select complete, which is actually the aggregate of all of the different models combined into one place. So a couple of different ways that you can bucket your different models for different contractors, and you can select the model here that you want to go into and hop right into a model. Okay, so maybe I want to actually, save this as a different view. So I've actually selected a couple of models here that I'm going to be saving as a new view, and I'm going to make that level 1 coordination. I'm going to make that a published view so that everyone else can see that, and we can leverage that particular view for future use there. Okay, so if I don't want to have to do this over and over again, that's why it's great to be able to use those views. And as you can see, I can jump in and I can already start to look at the different clashes that are available. Okay, you can change the different groupings, and you can also even come in and create new clashes within this area as well. Okay, so now I'm just creating a new clash. I can update the title if I'd like to, and update any of the information here if I need to. And now that new issue is being created from this clash here. Okay. Now I can come over here and I can look at my clashes tab, and we like to call this our clash matrix. And so now we're looking at all the different models, and we can see the number of clashes that are taking place between the different views within those models there. Okay. And that allows you to click on those and actually start to address those clashes from within those views. We can also select our different views here, as you can see. And we can also even take that and narrow it down to only certain models, as you can see here. So we're only looking at just a couple of different models here. And if I do select a view and it does have multiple models and I need to potentially remove some of those, I can always deselect those models, hit apply. And now I'm just looking at the 24 models that are associated with that particular view. Okay. All right. So that still applies to any of your different coordination spaces. So instead of just complete, I could possibly hop over into mechanical or even into electrical. And it really simplifies that process. And so that team members aren't too overwhelmed or aren't completely overwhelmed with too much information, essentially. So right here, we've got different tabs within the clashes, and we can see that which issues have been assigned, which issues have been closed, and we have an audit trail. Right here, we have views, and I mentioned views a little bit earlier. And so again, I don't have to recreate the different views. I can go ahead and set up predetermined views and make those published views for the other team members to see, okay? And so at this point, I want to take this information and let's see what and basically pull it over into Navisworks. And let's talk about how we can leverage this data within Navisworks. All right, Lisa.
All right. Thank you, Kyle. All right. So if you don't know me, I used to be a technical solutions executive at Autodesk and also spent about 12 years as a structural engineer. So I get this question a lot, even in my new position as a marketing manager. And that question is, can I still use Navisworks and do what I need to do, right? A lot of you have invested very heavily in Navisworks. There are certain workflows that you're used to using, your teams are used to using it. We don't want you to walk away from something that, is kind of just a very ingrained solution at your organization. So the answer is yes, you can still use Navisworks and do what you need to do. But when would you use Navisworks versus when would you want to use model coordination, right? So I personally believe that model coordination is pre-construction is a very powerful tool that's going to help your design teams and contractors work through and find issues a lot faster. I also believe that model coordination is a great tool for those that aren't Navisworks power users. You guys know probably that Navisworks is hard. It's hard to learn. It's not something that you can really just pick up and go with. So I think it gives those folks, right, that are not Navisworks power users and the folks that are in the field, the tools that they need to be able to coordinate a model, but it would also work great on more simplified projects where you can benefit from coordination, having everything up in the cloud, right, being able to create issues, view the models, do what you need to do. But let's talk about Navisworks for a second. So as projects get more complex, maybe it's a hospital, maybe it's some large manufacturing facility or a data center, laboratory, whatever it is, there's times where you need to use the tools that are in Navisworks. So let's, Kyle, show us a quick example of what that would look like.
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. All right. So moving on. So now we're inside of Navisworks here. Okay. This is inside of the Navisworks desktop application here. And so I'm going to go in Navisworks up to my coordination tab. And so I can get this app, I can get access to this through the Autodesk App Store. And so by going to the coordination tab and saying open, it's going to go over and look at all of my models that I have available that are up in the cloud for my project. I can also see all of my coordination spaces that have been predefined, and I'm just going to keep it on complete for right now. All right, so as you can see here, I have all the same views that we just saw in the web interface, and I have access to all of the different models that we were seeing there as well. You can see that they're all broken up by levels, just like we saw in the web interface. So let's just go to the level 1 coordination. Okay, so that's going to bring up and open up the models. So we'll give that a second. So now you can see that I've got my model opened up inside of Navisworks. Okay, and this is just level 1. I can zoom, I can rotate, I can do all of the same things that people that are familiar with Navisworks are able to do. And now I can also go to my Manage Issues tool, and you'll see that the issues that we've been looking at, I can see here in Navisworks the same way that I could inside of Revit. Okay, so I can see, you know, who an issue was assigned to, what the status of that issue is, and I can even possibly add more content to it. I can also create new issues here as well, which is what's happening right now. So here I'm creating a quick issue for this railing, the railing connection, and where it attaches to the wall. So I'm just going to go ahead and create that issue. I'm going to rename it very quickly. So I can type in the new name, the new title for my issue here. And after I get that typed in, then I can go through, it's going to say coordinate railing connection at corner. And so now I also have the ability to come in, add a description, assign that to someone, and again, possibly put a due date on it or add any additional references. If I assign it to an individual on the project, they're going to get notified by email of who needs to address this issue. So I'll go ahead and scroll down and show the different options there as I've done. And I can also, again, add any references that I need to. So now I'm going to refresh and just make sure that we see all of these and make sure it's pushing those up. And so now let's assume that we're to the point where the model's been fully coordinated and we're ready to do a sign off. So now, as you can see here, I'm creating an NWD file from that model, and I'm going to save it out to my desktop. And then after I've saved that to my desktop, I'll have the ability to just go in and upload that into my cloud project through the web browser there. Okay. So, you know, once we've got that in the cloud, and the whole point of this is just to get the information that we spent so much time working on in the office and getting that out into the field. So now let's talk a little bit more about what that next step looks like in getting this information out into the field to your teams. Lisa?
Thank you, Kyle. All right, so models on mobile. What does that mean, aside from sounding super catchy? We want everyone out in the field to be able to get access to this information, right? I, again, spent a lot of years in construction and absolutely understand the pain of working off of obsolete information and folks from the office forgetting to get our field folks that new updated information. So like Kyle said at the very beginning of our presentation today, good decisions are made when we have good information. So through mobile devices, you're able to get that information. You can view the models, you can navigate them through them, you can walk around them, you have access to all of the properties or the metadata. You even can add photos. You also have access to issues. So you're really connected to the office in this regard. You can even go through and schedule a meeting if you see an issue and you know that you need to talk about it really quickly.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like from within the mobile device here. Okay. So now I'm just showing a quick example of what this looks like from the mobile device perspective. right now I'm just on the home screen for the project, and now I can go into the files area. So then I'll go in and I'll select that NWD file that we've uploaded there. In the NWD, you can see that I've got access to the full model, and it's just based on how you set it up in Navisworks. And so you can, zoom in and out, just like you always have on a mobile device, pinch and pull. You also have the ability to use the walk feature with the joystick here and walk around throughout the building, okay? And we also have our pop-out view up in the top left that you can see. You can see I'm walking around here, and then I also have the ability to also change from the walk around view, and I can actually go in and move myself throughout the model with that pop-out view that's in the top, so that now I can quickly reorient myself to a different spot within the model where I may be needing to go in and actually examine. Also, rather than using that walk-around feature, we have the gyroscope feature, where now I'm able to actually take my iPad or my mobile device and move it, tilting it up and down and moving it from side to side. And that's actually moving the model with the mobile device as it's moving around there, okay? So I also had the ability to select items, as you can see here. See, I've got all of my viewpoints that are established within Navisworks, and I can jump to a specific viewpoint. And then also I have the ability to go in and not only see what those viewpoints look like, but then also go in and select different items. So right here, I accidentally selected on the ceiling. I want to select that railing there, and eventually there we go. I got the railing finally. And so not only can I select that railing, I can hit that dot again, and I can pull up any of the properties that have been built into that family, whether that's been added from within Revit primarily, or even from certain fields that may be able to be updated from within Navisworks as well. So as you can see, I've got all the information that's been embedded into that particular family, and I can take that and leverage that out into the field. Okay, we can also even go so far as to even have the ability to create new issues against items that we're looking at here within this model when we're out in the field as well. Okay. All right, Lisa, I'll kick it back over to you.
Thank you. All right. So one thing I do want to emphasize is that every project is different. We know that, right? Your approach is not always going to be the same on all of these projects because they are so different. They have different components, they have different needs, they have different requirements. And we also know that this is very much a people business, and we have to be able to adapt to the different people that we're working with. So one thing that I want to say and really recommend is that we start with the owner of a project. We have to make sure that our owners are on board with working on projects in this specific capacity. We want to help them see the value of it. We want to help those that you're working with see the value of this solution, right? And also that helps to build trust. So I think working with models and doing this process requires a lot of trust with everyone, and everyone does have to be on the same page because it is a very concerted effort from start to finish. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is that when all of this is done correctly, it really does make a difference in improving the lives of those that we're working with and the projects that we're working on. Next slide, Kyle. Thank you. All right. And then just some business outcomes. So we know that construction is difficult. It's very, very hard. Design is tough, and we spend a lot of time doing it. And if there's anything that we can do to help speed things up or to make things better or help with communication, try to get the right information so that the right decisions can be made. We definitely want to do this. We definitely want to invest in this. So on this final slide, I just want to reinforce these business outcomes that are with better communication, having clear requirements, and stronger collaboration. This really is our emphasis, and this is where we want to see things go. We want things to get better in the construction industry, and we want to continue to improve. And so we think that these tools that we reviewed today and showing the life of a model from, again, start to finish all the way through to the field really can make a big difference for everyone that is involved in the projects that you're working on.
Absolutely, Lisa. Absolutely. No, we appreciate that. So now we're going to quickly move into our Q&A session. We do have plenty of time for Q&A, and we do have some questions that have been submitted here. So one that was submitted and that I've already responded to is one of the users asked, it was Liam that asked, can this platform be used for AutoCAD files? And yes, it can. I was surprised. I've always said that there were 41 to 43 different viewable file types that could be leveraged on the platform. I was pleasantly surprised whenever I was putting together a webinar last month, and I went back and did a recount. There are 83 different viewable file types that can be leveraged within the Autodesk Construction Cloud. And one of the other things that I tell clients a lot in conversations is this is the only platform that was purpose-built to be able to leverage your different Autodesk, your native Autodesk design file types. So again, whether we're talking about Revit files, RVT files, or whether we're talking about DWG files, all of those can be leveraged here, as well as many, many more, okay? So we've got a couple of other questions here, and again, Liam, I hope that helped out. We've got another one that came in and said, do you have any recommendations for folder strategies? This is something that our firm really struggles with, and it becomes very frustrating when you're trying to find the files, okay? So I think that me and Lisa can kind of kick these back and forth a little bit, possibly give a little bit of both of our perspective on here. Now, when it comes to recommendations around folder strategies, it kind of goes back to one of the things that was mentioned earlier in the webinar of making sure that whatever folder strategy a team decides on, that is actually spelled out within the BIM execution plan for the project. Okay, the reality of it is that within the Autodesk Construction Cloud, there's not a quote unquote right or wrong way to set up your folders. Okay, you have the freedom and the ability to set up whatever type of a folder structure that you'd like between folders and subfolders. Okay, a lot of people, what I've seen a lot of clients do is they're looking at this as a means to transition away from a typical on-prem server-based storage solution. And so in many cases for those teams, they'll replicate the folder structure that they had already been leveraging for projects on their internal storage system. Okay. There are also examples that you can find out on Google if you just go to Google and type in project management folder structure. Okay. I've seen a lot of different folder structures that have been put in place over the course of working with many clients. And again, there's really not a right or wrong. Okay. It's all about, again, beginning with the end in mind and understanding and building out the necessary folder structure, but not going into overkill in many cases. Okay. And sometimes that's best figured out, maybe even through a little bit of trial and error as well. Now, Lisa, I'll back up and let you give your opinion on that specific question, if you don't mind also.
Yeah, of course. So my recommendations for folder strategies, and again, I spent a lot of time as an engineer and a couple of years as a technical solutions executive at Autodesk, is consistency, right? I would build these out at a company level and I would push them into each project. When we have consistency, folks know what to do. There's a lot less confusion and kind of frustration of where things go. And I think that you would see over time with that consistency that there's a better flow. People know where to put things, people know where to go look for things. And then, setting them up on a company level too, you also can attach permissions to those different folder structures. So if there are things that, you don't want certain roles or certain companies or personas to see inside of your project, you can just set up those permissions from that level. And it's not like this intricate process that you have to do for every project, which I think can be a little bit of a headache.
All right, great. And you brought up a very good point there, Lisa, which is the fact of being able to templatize your folder structure so that you can really, continue to leverage that same folder structure over and over on your projects, and therefore, again, creating that consistency across those projects. So great feedback there. Thank you so much. Okay, the next question that we had here was from Beatrice, and it says, is the cloud meant for viewing only, or can you model in the cloud? So the cloud and the web interface is really for viewing, okay? The cloud is not going to replace the need for your desktop design applications like Revit or AutoCAD or Civil 3D, okay? But what we were talking about earlier is in many cases and on most projects, you may have stakeholders that are not users of the desktop applications themselves. Okay, they're not a Revit user, they're not a CAD user, and so in many cases they may not have a suite of software that's assigned to them, but they still need to get in and view those models. And so that's really what this is intended for, is for the ability to go in and view the models, possibly respond to changes that you've seen in the model, whether that's through markups or even through the creation of issues. But it's not going to replace your native design software, again, like a Revit or AutoCAD or Civil 3D. So I hope that helps there. Okay. All right, next one here. Let's see, Liam with some good questions here. So Liam's next question was, what main benefit is there for using the construction cloud instead of BIM 360? Lisa, I'll toss that one over to you if you don't mind, and let you comment on that one, and then I might even be able to add a few caveats there as well.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. All right, so Liam, there's a lot, right? ACC was really created because it's essentially the merger of the best of PlanGrid and the best of BIM 360. So something I'll say in that regard is that PlanGrid is incredibly easy to use. It's very simplistic. Folks in the field can pick it up and they can just run with it. That was not the feedback that we received from a lot of folks on BIM 360 in the field. Not very easy to use, a little bit confusing, just wasn't as streamlined as much as PlanGrid. So usability is huge. And the fact that the mobile experience of Autodesk Construction Cloud looks very, very similar to the desktop experience also helps with adoption. You're not essentially looking at two different types of platforms. We also have more integrations with ACC than BIM 360 does. So that's another plus there. We also have different features that BIM 360 didn't have. We have things like progress tracking. We have things like schedule, right, where you can pull in maybe your P6 schedule or your project schedule into the actual project, and you can connect different workflows or different issues, different assets, different things that you're working on inside of the ACC project. You can connect them to the actual schedule. So we're eliminating that disconnection there too. In assets, right, in asset tracking, we can connect to many more pieces of the project, things like progress tracking, things like schedule, right? We didn't have that connectivity in BIM 360, and that just allows for a way better handover experience. So your owners are going to see a lot less of a cost hike, right, when we hand projects over to owners, because they're not going to have to be looking for all of that information and tie it together. We're much better equipped to tie that information together as we're working on the project. And then that, again, is just going to provide a much better handover experience for our owners. We also have a lot more flexibility and control in overall project management. So on, a company level, the ability to templatize a lot more, the ability to just add in more customizations. Again, the increased amount of integrations we have is really big. We have more flexibility in insights. You now can decide what parts of a project you care about and group them together in insights. That was not a customizable feature at all in BIM 360. We were stuck with whatever we had deemed important in terms of insights, and insights is now shareable, and you can set permissions to insights. So like, for example, for your owners, maybe you don't want them to see all of the insights of a project. You can decide what insights you're wanting to share with them. So that's really nice too. We didn't have photos on the desktop in BIM 360. We just had them in the field. Now we have them on on the mobile device and desktop. So having photos in both of those spaces is really big. And then the last thing that I can think of off the top of my head is there's a lot more RFI and submittal flexibility and customization. Those workflows are now completely customizable, and they were just cut and dry inside of BIM 360. Kyle, anything
Great
to add?
Well, no, you did a great job of calling out, even more than I could have thought of right off the top of my head, Lisa, to be honest with you. But one of the things that I will call out, especially for those folks that may have leveraged build on the BIM 360 side, on that BIM 360 platform, is, and you even hinted to this a little bit, Lisa, was whenever you're working in the BIM 360 platform, document management was document management. And so you constantly had to, I felt like I was constantly moving back and forth between modules all the time, whether I was in the document management module or possibly in the project management module, working with RFIs or submittals, or maybe even into the field management module, working with checklists. But if I needed anything from docs, I had to go back to the document management module. In the new Construction Cloud Unified platform, one of the things that people automatically see is specifically if it's a build user. I have files within the build module, and it's the exact same files that we see in docs. So for me out in the field, or even as a Autodesk build license holder and looking at it through the web interface, I'm not having to move between modules as much because I live in build and I'm most concerned with project management, field management. I can land in that build module and I can probably do 90 to 95% of my job within the build module without having to jump back and forth between other modules like the docs module, just to access that pertinent information that's being housed in that single source of truth there. So again, a lot more user friendly, a lot less moving around between the modules. Those are some of the things that I've seen that have really benefited clients and just made it a lot easier to adopt and to implement out into amongst their workforce there. Okay, so great. Awesome. So the next one we have here, another question came in. It says, does the platform work if different teams are using different softwares on the same project? For example, if the architecture team is working in Revit and the MEP team is working in AutoCAD? Absolutely. Now, when we're talking about this from the perspective of coordination, one of the things that's really going to be important here is that if, let's say, again, in your example here that was provided, if the MEP team is working in AutoCAD, if they are wanting those DWG files to be leveraged within the model coordination module, you have to be also drafting in that 3D view. Okay, so you're essentially, even though you may not see it as modeling, you somewhat are even in AutoCAD. But again, you have to have that set up within those 3D views and have your elevation set up correctly for the different systems that you're actually putting together for the project within AutoCAD. But yes, both platforms, you could be using either or from the design tool perspective. All of that can be housed and can be leveraged within the Autodesk Construction Cloud there. Okay. All right, and the last question that we've got here came in from Carl, and this is a great question. This is actually digging down deep. Carl, you've had some experience with the platform, I could tell just by this question. So Carl's question was, does the feature of being able to create custom status options for issues, does that require that assets are being initialized on the ACC platform? And does it require a BIM Collaborate Pro license? Okay, so you do not have to be leveraging assets in order to create your own custom status options for issues. Okay, and assets are only available whenever you're leveraging Autodesk Build. Okay, so let's talk about this from the perspective of someone that may be using BIM Collaborate Pro or possibly even Docs. Okay, so being able to set up those custom issue statuses, that can all take place within the docs area. Okay, so whether it's a stakeholder that's not a designer and maybe they only have a docs license, that can be done there if they're a project administrator. If it's a user that is leveraging a BIM Collaborate Pro license because they are a part of the design team and they're connecting, say, their Revit software to the cloud, again, that can be done, but it has to be done from the project administration standpoint or from a project administrator's perspective. They would just need to go into the issues and go into the settings and then create the custom statuses. Also, you have to identify which issue types that custom status option needs to be applied to. But you do not have to leverage assets. And again, this can be done with just the baseline docs licensing. But it could also be leveraged for anyone that might be leveraging any of the other license types on the Autodesk Construction Cloud. Okay, so Carl, I hope that helped to answer your question there. I'm going to mark that one as being answered as well. Team, we do have a few more minutes. If there's anyone on the call that has any additional questions, if you do, please take the opportunity to go ahead and type that into that Q&A panel there. Thank you to all of those that did provide some questions here. Those are some great questions that came about. And the other thing too is we tried to answer the biggest majority of these live. If you would like to have a deeper conversation around any of the questions that have been answered, whether it was one of your own or maybe another question that got asked and it made you think, wow, we've had that same we've had those same thoughts, or we've run into that same issue. If that's something that you like to have a more in-depth conversation with us about, and we would welcome that opportunity. Feel free to reach out to your designated account executive here at ATG. If you're not quite sure who your designated account executive may be, or who your dedicated customer success representative may be within the organization, you can always leverage our email address. It is sales@atgusa.com, and then we'll get that routed to the customer success representative or the account executive that would be responsible for your account there. Looking here, don't see any other questions coming in. I really wanted to say thank you to everyone who joined in. Oh, hold on. Let me back up because we had one more that just got. Oh, okay, great. Thanks, Carl. Hey, man, no problem at all. That's great to hear. So wasn't another question. Again, thank you so much for joining in today. For those of you that joined us live. Also, very important for me to always say thank you so much, Lisa, for being able to jump in and assist with the webinar today. You always bring a lot of great value and a lot of great perspective to the conversations here.
Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, guys, for joining.
Have a great day, everyone.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe and check out some of the other content on our channel.